Hey everybody, and Jonathan here with another Twinmotion 2023 video. Now this is the first time I've done a tutorial on the new version, and I was blown away by the renderings and the animation I produced for this amazing urban project to visualize a museum in a nice urban context. In this tutorial you're going to learn how to basically set up camera views, adjust textures, enhance the model with people, trees and lots of life, and basically render out some amazing animations and visuals. So I really do hope you enjoy this tutorial. It was definitely fun to make, and I will be sharing all the files, so if you want to follow along, you're more than welcome. So as ever, thanks for watching, and if you are new around here, please drop a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and motivate me to make lots more videos for you. So thanks for watching everybody, enjoy the video. So let's get into this. The first thing I'm going to do is pop down to the import tab, click plus, and we're going to go ahead and select the geometry of our file. Let's click open, and this is a file that I'm going to be able to share with you. So have a look in the description. I'll put a link in and I'll basically share the Cinema 4D file so you can also do the same thing and follow the tutorial if you would like to, because I know that's something my subscribers have been requesting for a little while. Okay, so here we are. Here's Paul's file. Very kind of him to share this wonderful file with me. And basically, it's a Cinema 4D file. It's about 35 megabytes. So I'm going to go ahead and import and open this one. Now, do remember, there's a few different options here. I'm going to go for keep hierarchy, just because I might want flexibility. But it may be that this will also work quite nicely with collapse by material as well. We'll see. So let's click import, and it will basically read and extract the data. I'm going to go click OK and just sort of go ahead and just see how the model comes in this first instance. So as you can see, if you have a quick look around the model once imported, it's pretty amazing. We've got a lot of detail down at street level, and we've got these lovely sort of background buildings, if you like. Now I know this was done in a mixture of Vectorworks and Cinema 4D, so Paul tells me. So I can see a few problems that I'm going to need to fix right away. But what I'm going to do is kind of basically get down onto the project and just sort of choose a few views that I'm going to kind of work at. And basically the first problem I'm going to try and fix is the material scaling. Now this sometimes happens when you import files. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll click T for texture. We're simply going to go onto our texture tool, sample our material, and basically that would allow us to basically click into the model and select that texture, as you can see. And for some reason, it just sort of looks like it's scaled way up too much. So I'm going to scale it down. It looks like it's scaling by a factor of 10 actually. I could be wrong, but that maybe is what's going on. So let's just scale that down. That looks a lot better already. So basically, wherever you see these sort of texture problems, just use the texture tool. Okay, so what we're going to do next is just spend a bit of time fixing some of these materials. Now, of course, I can go down and then select some of my sort of brick materials, for example, and just sort of apply some nicer materials. So I'm going to go just spend a few minutes running around the model, applying these materials. And again, if you want me to sort of send over the Twinmotion file, I will. Basically, let's go through and get some nice reflective glass on those. And I think that's looking good. Maybe I'll just reduce that opacity a little bit there. Actually, I want it pretty reflective, to be honest, so that we kind of don't see into the buildings, because there's not that much detail in there. Another thing that I'll be doing is just basically replacing things like the asphalt. So let's go ahead and do this bit now. I think let's go to ground, go to man-made, and basically let's just drag on a couple of different asphalts. Now what I quite like to do here is select the colour and basically just, you know, just sort of lighten or darken the different textures. So I think actually what I'll do is just darken that road down. So the colour picker always pops up in the middle of the screen. Let's just darken that down a bit. Good. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to spend a little bit of time just recording this process, and then we'll come back in a minute and I'll run on to the next stage. So what I do. Okay, so we're doing pretty well. We've basically started to texture up our model quite a bit more and mess around with these different materials, just sort of getting them to look a lot better than the defaults. Don't forget that you can also drag the materials in from the browser here. And one thing to note is if you do find there's lots of materials that you don't need anymore because you've tried to add a few, if you select them all, and just click the delete key, that will actually delete all the materials that are unused. So you're only left with really materials that are actually used in the project. Now another really nice tip is nothing is perfect. So one of the things I do like to do at the next stage is just start to add a bit of grunge. And you can see, as well as a bit of grunge, sometimes a little bit of adjustment of the roughness. Now you don't want this too shiny, but just to sort of adds a bit of a pop to the model. So let's select this road, let's get a bit of grunge, and you can just see that really kind of helps. Now, one lovely thing is when you click the path tracing, both the grunge but also the things like reflections look amazing. So I just clicked R for that path tracing to kick in, and if I go down to my low settings just for now, while I'm working, that'll be pretty zippy. I'm not quite saying I can work in real time, but almost, you know, you can almost visualize in real time with a good graphics card. Okay, so I think I'll probably do most of my work in the normal settings, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so I think next up, I just want to kind of replace a few more materials here. Let's kind of darken that down. So basically, I'll keep working on this for a little bit more, and my next step is we're going to be doing some entourage. So we're going to be looking at things like replacing the cars and the people. Okay, so in order to do this, I'm going to go to my selection tool, click onto this car here. So I managed to select my cars, and if you did want to, you could actually type in the search dialog, so we could type in the word car and basically search. You can pretty much see they're all in here. Now, one thing I have noticed is they're all kind of grouped together as one big group. So I'm going to need to delete some of these, but that's not a problem because I can rapidly add some Twinmotion ones back in. I think I'll be a bit selective, so let's go and add a few new cars. Let's go to vehicles and basically cars. Now do remember what's nice is you can select a bunch of these in one go. In fact, I'm just going to select all of them and just fairly randomly place some of these cars parked along the strip of the building. And what I'm going to get is hopefully a fairly randomized choice of car each time. Okay, that's looking good. And basically then what I'll be able to do is swap a few of these out as well. So definitely is choosing a random car as I go around, and this time I can click and I'll basically be able to rotate that afterwards. Okay, so we'll go ahead and place some cars, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and look at how we place some people, and this is going to be really nice and it will really bring the scene to life quite rapidly. So what I'm now going to do is basically change some of the things like the weather and so on. So to do this, I'm going to go to my ambience, and basically I can adjust the weather sort of globally. Okay, and you can see you get some really nice sort of different effects on here. But actually, because I want to keep this fairly straightforward, I'm going to basically create a new image and do it within the image. And I think this is always a better idea because then you can quit to media mode and go back to the normal sort of unaltered state, if you like. So let's go ahead and adjust this, and I'm going to make this just a little bit more rainy. Now that looks really nice. I really love the rain there. Let's just kind of adjust this weather here. You can make it snow and things like this, of course. Let's maybe have a look at that a bit later. Let's just keep it sort of fairly, not raining, but just sort of slightly post-rain. Okay, so that's already looking good. You can also see some nice sort of clouds in the sky. So definitely you can play around with things like the north angle as well to sort of get those sort of different shadow times coming into the model. And that's something that I always love with Twinmotion, just searching for that sort of best time of day as well, and you can see those lovely sort of hard shadows coming in. So I think we'll kind of just go through to sort of, yeah, that looks pretty good. That's fine. Okay, so there we go. There's my first image. Let's click OK. So just compare that to where we started with Quit Media Mode. Look pretty bland, if you like, and then the actual first image itself. One thing I would recommend also is on your very first image, go to the settings and just crank this up to 4K quality, because that will mean that all the other images you then create afterwards will be 4K. And that's my sort of preferred image quality as a sort of starting point for rendering. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll kind of move forward to a different vantage point. Now, if you want to stay at eye level, remember to click M. M will put you down at sort of almost like a pedestrian type level. So that's a really good sort of view of your eyesight at that particular eye level. Because it is quite easy, especially if you're moving sort of quite fast, to basically sort of take off, and I just sometimes want to reset that down to my eye level. Okay, so I've set up a number of images here, different sort of conditions and different views as well. Now if you do find that as you're going you need to sort of click on some of the textures and fix them, then that's, you know, something that I would definitely recommend with Twinmotion as you go through. So I would like to just darken that down a bit, that building there. And also I want to introduce a bit of grunge onto that sort of brickwork to make it look a bit less realistic. So that will really, really help as we go through the process. This building here, for example, is looking very light. So again, I'm just going to kind of darken that right down, take away that sort of focal point, if you like. So these are the kind of things that you'll want to do as you go through. No particular order as you do this. You can kind of just do it as and when you sort of spot the problem, like this white here is very, very blown out. So let me kind of just drop that right down in terms of quality and colour. That looks a lot better. And there's one here. You get the idea. Okay, so what we're going to do next then is set up some basically animation paths. And then what we'll do, we'll fix a few of the materials that we need to on that particular animation path. Now, the main focal point of this project that Paul told me about was that this historical building was sort of set in some context, and that's why he kind of modelled the rest of this city scene. So what we're going to do, we're going to basically reset our image to this point here, I think. We're going to kind of walk up the street as if we're heading to that image. So what I'm going to do then to set my first animation is go to Media. Let's just pop this panel and go to Video. Check I'm at eye level, which I am. Going to click on my plus point and basically add my first keyframe. So we're going to kind of put it into sort of medium speed, just sort of walk through down that road. And basically the key with this is to try to get your animation frames fairly sort of evenly spaced out. Otherwise you find that you speed up at some point. So let's just click M again and click plus. So already, if I want to, I can just rewind. Here we go, let's just sort of preview that very nice little simple animation. It's already looking interesting, but it's going to look a lot better by the time we finish this, I promise you. Okay, so let's keep doing this. Let's kind of carry on a bit forward. I might actually speed things up a little bit here. And I'll just click M to get down to that eye level again. And eventually, try and sort of stay. So if you do need to, just click back onto the original image. Yeah, you can see sometimes, depending on where the camera is facing, it's easy to drop down. Okay, so let's just click M to get back to eye level. Okay, so I'm going to preview that little section there. What I'm looking for is just to make sure it doesn't sort of speed up too much. Okay, so that's looking all right so far. So we're getting a bit closer to our sort of intended destination building now. So let's go through a bit more. Click M. I'm going a bit closer to this side of the sort of street now, if you like. And we'll walk by, because I want to kind of focus on that building as we kind of swing by. Okay, so now what I'm keen to do, I'm going to go into sort of slow mode and see if I can basically pan around, still moving forward, a bit tricky, while almost like I'm looking out the window and looking at that building. And we're just going to kind of do a bit of a sideways pan just to show it off to the best. Let me click on that. So I just want to kind of play this little bit of keyframe through. Yeah, okay, that looks pretty cool. So I just want to see if I add a bit more time into the whole thing. Let's go for 30 seconds. Let's rewind. So it should be pretty quick at the beginning, and then it will kind of go a bit faster. Okay, but the problem with this is you've just got to get the pace right, otherwise it looks very strange when it kind of really speeds up when you add the keyframes quite close together. So I just want to check out that this works. Now I've spotted a problem. There was a massive car here, and I think I know what's happened there. That's actually from the original set of cars. Yeah, it is. So let me just sort of delete that one. Okay, so that was on top. And the good thing is you can just sort of stop and carry on at any time. Okay, so this is where it's going to start speeding up, if anything. Now with a bit more time in, that is actually probably okay. I'm fairly happy. So we'll carry on moving down here just to show off that whole elevation of that building. And we'll add another keyframe in. And I think we'll do one more. And we'll kind of just look back at the entire sort of elevation of that building, if you like. So that's actually quite a nice little shot there. Okay, so let's play one more time from about this point onwards, just to check. So this is what I recommend. You just check things as you go. If it looks weird, then I will show you another technique in a second where you can actually get this looking pretty good. But I'm fairly happy with that. It's actually not too bad. Excellent. Let's go ahead and create one more image. And this time what I'm keen to do is try out the HDRI sky. So I'm going to click Enable and load in one of my HDRIs. Now at the moment you can see I've got a pretty bright one, so if I open up the details of that, it's actually already fairly bright. So let's just change that to be a little bit darker. Let's try rotating it around and see how that works. That's pretty nice. And I can turn on whether it affects the lighting or not, or not. Okay, so I think it looks better with the lighting being affected, of course. I can also, if I want to go over to my libraries and materials, I've got loads of additional HDRIs I can load in. So I'm keen to just try a slightly different one. Now, some of these I haven't actually downloaded yet, so if I do want to, I'll just basically click onto the download button, and hopefully that will kind of take a few seconds, and you can see it's downloading pretty quickly. So I don't know how this is going to work, but let's just drag this into the scene, and we'll be able to compare this with the previous one. So it's definitely something that I recommend searching for. Now that looks quite dramatic, so I think what I might do is just up the intensity a little bit and just try slightly different rotation. Okay, and that's actually looking really quite cool. I'm quite liking that. It's almost like a slightly sort of sunrise atmosphere. The good thing is I can easily sort of just boost up the things like the ambient lighting as well. So if I do want to, I could just kind of go down, let's just tone that weather down a little bit, that looks nice, and just boost up that exposure level just a tad. Now do remember one other thing, so that's actually really nice, I like that view. So just look where I started. In fact, if I quit media mode altogether, this is where I started in the media mode. Here was my first image, looks nice with a bit of kind of water on the pavement, and basically the second one, not keen on that one actually. That one looks good. I think what I'll do with this one, I'll just try a different sky. Let's go for something a bit more overcast. So let's try downloading a few of these. Okay, so the thing is you've just got to try these out really. One thing I would recommend is you click favourites. So make sure you favourite the ones you have downloaded. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to actually sort of see which ones you've actually got downloaded there. Okay, so let's go down to our HDRI. And when one of these is downloaded, let's try, this one's going to be a bit dark I think. Actually, it's quite a nice sort of feel and look. Particularly, I think, if I just take that exposure level down a little bit as well. Let me just try fiddling around with the intensity. Yeah, that's actually really nice. It's sort of kind of like a sunset-y sort of time of day. So I might just adjust that round just so those shadows aren't quite as dramatic. Actually, you know what? I really, really like this one. I'm going to try one more. Okay, so let's do another image. And let's go for something really dramatic. So let's go for one of these sort of really dramatic sunsets here. Let's just try maybe this one here. So, you know, this is definitely a really good way just to preview, to find out with the same, pretty much the same image, which lighting you prefer before you kind of go ahead and set up things like the animations. Okay, so I think what we'll do is going to download, which one was it we got? This one here. Drag that one in. HDRI is a very quick way to completely change the look of your image, and it's definitely something I recommend you try out. And that actually looks really nice. So with a little bit of an adjustment there, that looks quite cool. Just change that lighting there to see what happens if we kind of scan through. Yeah, it looks really nice. I love this sort of preview. Now don't forget to click R to get the ray traced effect. But one downside of the ray tracing is you'll notice that you will need to pump up the intensity level to a good level. Okay, so if you're going to use the ray tracing, basically up the intensity. There's one other factor you probably need to go through to your lighting and basically up the exposure and go into the details and get the sun. Sun intensity I'm looking for, there we go. Yeah, okay, so I normally make that about, I don't know, 5, 10, something like that. So let's just let that render out for a second. And yeah, look at that image, that looks stunning. So if you compare the difference between non-ray traced real-time rendering and path traced, very, very different look of the image as well. Bearing in mind I'm just in low quality. This will be much nicer when I do the high quality renders later. Okay, so I'll leave you to have a play around with the HDRIs and the lighting and those sort of things. Let's look at the next section, which is adding that entourage and bringing the image to life. Okay, so we're ready to start setting up our animations. So let's go ahead, before we put our entourage in, let's click on the video, and what we'll do, we'll click our plus frame to get our first video. Now do remember, if you're going to change the lighting, now is the time to do this. So I'm going to go down to my HDRI and enable. Okay, now I'm going to go and drop in the sky that I really liked from before, just to get that nice dramatic sort of lighting. And I'm just going to go through to get that nice sort of time of day. And basically, don't forget that you can actually open up all these sub-settings, but the main sort of hero items are all available for you. One other thing to remember is on the camera setting, as well as things like the focal length, which are quite nice to adapt. So I'm going to go down to a sort of 20mm lens, which will be quite a nice sort of cinematic effect. I can actually put a bit of depth of field on. Okay, but with the depth of field, you're going to want to sort of set that distance to something a bit further away. So basically you can see, with it enabled, a tiny sort of difference, I think, on that depth of field, and this will come across probably much more in the video. Don't forget, we've also got these nice composition overlays. Okay, and this is really useful now to help you sort of frame up your video, as well as your sort of still images. So I'll actually turn off that one, and I'm going to turn on the video action safe. So now you can see this really nice sort of framed up setting, and let's sort of keep that focal point about 50%, I think, is a really good sort of set here. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with my first keyframe. Let's move down this street. So I'm going to click, say, number 4 to get my medium speed. I'm going to wander down the street a little bit and click plus. Let's go down a bit more. Now try and keep the amount of movement similar each time. Let me just click M again just to recenter the view, and we'll kind of wander down. I think what I'll do to begin with, I'll just do a nice little wander down all the way down the street to this kind of junction, and that looks good. So let's have a little click play. Of course it goes really fast, so we're going to add a bit more time in here. So I'm going to say about 30 seconds of animation. So this should give me a very nice. Now this is super helpful, isn't it? Just keeping on these keyframes as we're working. In a minute I'll be able to turn those off. Obviously when we render out the full video you won't see those at all. So if you do spot something, as I did there, as you're moving through like a car on top of a car, just basically stop and sort this out as you go through. And by the way, with the cars, one thing I really like with those cars is that you can actually just sort of click on colour, just sort of swap out the colour as well, just a little aside. Okay, so now I can carry on wandering around my animation. And yeah, that's looking really interesting. Now another thing that might be quite nice is to play around with the lighting changing at different times of the day. So I'll have a look at that in another section as well. So I've set up a couple of animations already. I'm just going to set one more up. So basically here I am clicking M down to get to pedestrian level. Let's set my first keyframe. Just going to walk along. Let's go a little bit slower here, and basically add another keyframe. And I really want to sort of turn this corner to reveal the building, just to give an experience of what it might be like driving up. Kind of just turn this corner. So it's a really nice how you can almost drive in real time. I really like these new sort of camera safe and video safe mechanisms here. And there we go, that looks absolutely gorgeous as we turn that corner there. And now we can have a look at our building as we go by. So that's definitely something I recommend. You just sort of drive by. Try and click keyframes every sort of fairly evenly as you go through. And I'll show you some great little tips for adding even more detail in a second. I think one more keyframe and we'll be done. Okay, so let's review that little video there. Let's just add a nice amount of time in, and hopefully it'll be nice and smooth as we go through. Now if you do find it a bit distracting seeing the camera safe when you want to review, basically just go onto the camera, turn off the composition and just disable. So that will do it for the entire video, but while you're creating the video you can see it's super useful. Now that looks really cool. Just kind of approaching from this direction, you get a different nice sort of set of lighting conditions as you go around this corner, and it reveals itself as we approach the museum building itself. So very nice. I'm really happy with the reflections and lighting. I like this sort of brightness here. It's not perfect, but you know, for this tutorial it's not bad and it's quite rapid to do. Okay, so I've got 3 really nice video clips. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this to life with people, entourage, moving cars and that kind of thing, and look at how we can create things like character paths. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is focus a little bit on decals. So if I go down to my objects, you'll notice we've got loads of different decals. Now this is actually really nice because basically what I can do is just sort of drag a few of these decals onto the road and things like that, as it were. Now that isn't a very good place for a box junction, I know, but it gives you a bit of an idea. It just adds a lot more detail. Or, you know, I could kind of add in a bike lane symbol there. So have a little scroll through these. Things like these manholes add quite a nice bit of detail to the model. And of course, things like a bit of graffiti sometimes and some staining on the roads as well. Now all of these, it's quite nice. It can be sort of scaled up or scaled down. You can change the depth and things like the sorting order as well. Now, I certainly don't want any graffiti on that building there, but let's just add a little bit onto one or two of these, just to sort of show you the effect of adding that extra detail. Now, I'm not condoning graffiti, although some of it is actually very, very cool. Let's just sort of give a bit of life to this scene with a few more things going on. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. Good, okay, so you get the idea. That definitely is something we can do onto our scene. We can kind of change the opacity as well. I'm going to just sort of fade it down a bit more to get a bit more detail in there. So already that's actually looking a lot nicer. Now that's entourage, and do be aware if you click the path tracing button now, even though I need to adjust the lighting if I go for path tracing, you will see that you've still got those decals in there. So I'll try and render out some path traced animations, but to begin with, I'm definitely going to be working in the real-time rendering, simply because it's so much faster. Okay, so next up, what we're going to do is come out of pedestrian level. In fact, I'm going to quit media mode back into the normal mode now. So I really want to kind of bring this to life with a few more people. Let's just get a little bit more graffiti. Definitely don't want any graffiti on the building itself. We're pretty happy to have a bit on some of these sort of side buildings as well. Right, so let's go for it. We're going to go to populate. But actually what I'm keen to do is I'm going to go to my paths. So the first thing we're going to do is a character path. Okay, so for this I'm going to basically just zoom right out and I'm going to set up a really nice sort of character path, basically just walking all the way down the street. So we're going to have one walking all the way down this sidewalk. And let's just sort of pan across. And we're going to kind of walk down to here. And then we're going to turn the corner a little bit. And let me just see if I can orbit around that view. Just sort of walk down that road there. Okay, not perfect, but that's not too bad. I can always go down and select the character path afterwards. So let's close down the model there. Should find all the things that I've added, including that character path. So I should be able to kind of select it at any time. And if I want to do a little bit of tweaking, I can. So just sort of be aware that that's something you can do afterwards. Can be a bit fiddly from this distance. Okay, so let's go ahead and put another character path in. So we'll go to populate, character path, click on the pen, and basically this time I'm just going to kind of have people walking up this little road here. And you need to put an extra few points in as they turn the corner, and let's have them walking up to, well, to the end of the street, I guess. That's pretty reasonable. And escape. Okay, so let me get down to eye level. I can already see a few people spawned in, so that's cool. Definitely need a few over this side as well. But just before we go any further, just click onto my character path. You'll notice that I can actually change the width of it a little bit and also the density. So I can have a few more people. I could probably even have them walking both ways by actually copying the path. Okay, so what I might do is do copy and then paste and then reverse the direction. Okay, I will need to just move that path a little bit. So let me select it and now get my move tool. And basically let's just kind of be very careful and move it across just a tiny bit. Oh, that was rotating. Let's go onto our axis. And we're just going to move it across a little bit just so people aren't sort of crashing into each other. And there's my first one. In fact, I'll move that one back a tiny bit more. Okay, so let me get down to eye level. It looks quite nice now. We've got this sort of level of realism as people kind of walk down the street. So that's about it for this particular tutorial. What we'll do, we'll play out with the final footage that I produced in the making of this video for you. So thanks for watching everybody. See you next time.